Okay, this will be a little unusual because it's not going to be about linguistics. It's actually going to be about logistics of negotiating and selling out. No, I don't know about logistics. I just needed a rhyme. But the title of the video is probably The Art of Negotiating for Translators. Although, to make a disclaimer, I'm no grand negotiator, I'm no Grant Cardone, I'm no Donald Trump. I'm not talking about Trump the president right now. I'm talking about Trump the closer and the negotiator, and I think he's a mighty good negotiator. Don't care what you think of him as a politician. But it's not about Donald Trump either. He was just an example. There are a lot of really good negotiators. And I think also a person's personality goes into negotiating a long ways. But I think that several key principles apply, and I'm going to share at least my successful actions and successful viewpoints and perspectives in negotiating. And this applies to negotiating translation and interpreting jobs. It also applies to negotiating in life, because we negotiate all the time. Everything, like when I read the book Sell or Be Sold by Grant Cardone, he makes a really good point that everything in life is a sale. Right? If you take this all-embracive general view of sales, it's not just selling for money. Anytime that you're trying to convince anybody of anything, be it to ask a girl out on a date or an apartment rental or anything. And sometimes it's silly because sometimes it feels like the people should be selling you, but you're the one who has to be selling. Well, that's the reality of life. Sometimes you have to sell them on selling you. Sometimes life is not fair. Anyway, don't be so ingenuous. Be ingenious rather than ingenuous, and realize that sometimes in life you'll have to show persistence and sell things or sell your services or sell your viewpoint, even though theoretically and by all means or by all, I don't know, logic and justice, it should be the other person. But anyway, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. I think one really powerful point is that you should always be able and willing to walk away from the negotiations table, and that gives you power. But this point should also not be abused and overused, because when it's abused and overused, then it can be a major turnoff. I'll give you an example. Just recently, this guy texts me and he asks me about a diploma translation, or no, a passport translation, and he just sends me 2 pages, and I said, well, I'll do 2 pages for you for free, it's no big deal. And I tell him, but are you sure that you only need 2 pages, because passports tend to be longer? And he says, you're right, here's the whole passport. And then I quoted him something, it wasn't a lot, it was $120, but he says, that's way more than I expected to pay. And it's sort of like there's an expectation there, like, can you give me a discount? And I said, okay. And he says, I'm gonna look for other translators. I say, okay. And he says, I found another cheaper translator, can you review it? I say, no, I don't do that. And so I just basically walked away from a job, which this may be not the best example. You should also be willing to walk away from more lucrative jobs. For example, I was negotiating a job with one of the US states. It was a court job. Basically, they offered me 2 days, not consecutive days, but 2 days, and it made sense. And then they canceled one. And also they changed something, and they said your travel time will only apply if you travel after 5, and if you travel before 5, it will interlap with the other time. And I was like, but we didn't talk about that, so maybe not. And all actually I wanted them to really do is give me a 5-minute call so we can negotiate all these details. And I said, if you call me, I assure you 99% that you will have the best interpreter possible, and that we'll negotiate this deal. They never called me, so I walked away from the negotiations. And people feel that, like, when you don't need it, you know, when you can walk away from it, the deal usually closes. Like recently I closed this book cycle for actually 9 books possibly, but right now we're starting with 2. And I told the author, I'm actually not too much into translating books anymore. I'm interested in helping you. Let me try and put the team together. But then he really sold me without selling me. He was just so pleasant. And I loved his attitude, and I loved everything about talking to him, that I said, that's fine, I will do it personally, you know. But I was willing to walk away from it, and actually he was willing to walk away from it too, because he said, you know, I don't like to convince people. So it was good. It was just a normal human communication without a sales pitch. So that's important. But the reason I say it should not be overdone, because some people take it way too far, and they make it clear to you that they don't care. And that's a major turnoff. When somebody doesn't care to help me, I'm like, nope, let me go look for somebody else. And actually, that's the other side of the coin, or the other edge of the double-edged sword is that you should be very willing to help that particular person. It shouldn't be a must-have, it shouldn't be an obsession, but the willingness to help should be felt. And that's a big, at least for me. It's worked for me as on the sales side, and it's worked for me on the client side. When somebody really sincerely wants to help you and wants the project, people feel it. And I've done it many times. For example, I remember one of my first ever traveling simultaneous jobs. The girl's name was Abigail. Thanks, Abigail. Shout out to you if you ever hear this video. But it was a job of Russian biologists and hunters somewhere in Montana and in Yellowstone. And the money wasn't great, but for me it was just an experience. And at one point they were like, you know, we're not even sure we have the money for an interpreter. We would like to have one. But I showed such willingness. I was like, send me the program. What is it going to be about? I really want to do it. I will even bring my own equipment, which was like homemade, put together, makeshift equipment, right? So I showed such willingness that I got the job. And I've done this time and again. You just show your willingness and you never make it about money. Like when people ask me, what's your rate? I was like, can we first discuss the job? Can we first discuss, your needs? Can we discuss the project? Can we discuss the terminology? I can tell you my rate. It's not a secret. But let's discuss the job, because that's what I'm interested in. But when people on the client side ask me, what's your rate? Like as the first question in the email or whatever, I'm usually way turned off, because I don't close projects on the rates. I'm not the cheapest linguist, and I'm not interested in the rates first and foremost, And before discussing your rates, I always want to discuss the project. So that is another point. What's another tip? Well, honestly, you should probably read sales books by people you admire. I highly admire Grant Cardone, and I highly recommend all of his books, but he's not the only one who talks about sales, obviously. Brian Tracy is a cool dude too. But that willingness to help is super important. Knowing how to close the deal and being clutch, to use a slangy word, is also very important, because you can do like the best presentation, but unless you know how to actually seal the deal, it's not going to go anywhere. And I really like a point to, I need to give credit where credit is due. This is something I learned from Grant Cardone, that when you're closing, you're not being pushy. You're actually doing the person a favor, because people like to, I don't know if they like to, but they tend to be indecisive. They tend to, wander all over the place in wonder and amazement and not want to make decisions. So when you help somebody actually make a decision, even if it seems a little bit pushy, but in a polite and courteous way, you're usually doing the person a favor, because philosophically speaking, it is very bad to be indecisive. It's better to say yes or no. I'm going on the date, I'm not going on the date. I'm doing the book project, I'm not doing the book project, That's actually a life tip. If you take nothing else from this video, take this as a life tip. Decide things in the yes or no category, like starting today. Practice it for a day or for a week, and it's really good. But you can always change your decision later, but make decisions. And so when you help a person close the deal, you're doing them a favor, but you're also doing them a favor if you know that you're one of the best or the best. Then you're doing them a huge favor, because if they don't go with you, they're going to go with somebody of lesser quality. So closing the deal is not just about you, my money, my profit, my egoism. No, it's about helping the other person. And you should have that confidence that I'm the best or one of the best. If you don't have that confidence, that's a matter for another clip, because you should gain it. And if you need help, please contact me, because I also train and consult interpreters and translators and linguists in general. But yeah, so when you're closing the deal, you're doing the person a favor. Let's see if anything else comes to mind. In this world of AI and bureaucracy and boring chats, like that's one of my pet peeves, is when AI answers you, or when people answer you who are bureaucrats, or when like 10 different people are answering you through the same chat. Like, make it a point to be personal and personable. If you can get the person on the phone, or better yet in person, if you're in the same city, that's just gonna add so much personal touch. Like, I hate it. I honestly hate it when you have to deal with all this AI and this bureaucracy, and when people tend to be stupid even when they're not stupid. So if you can add a personal touch, that's just gonna differentiate you from the crowd and put you above the fray and above everybody else. Generally speaking, anything you can do that is unique And that is another thing that Grant Cardone also talks about, but I knew that and I kind of felt that instinctively on my own as well. Anything that you can do that is unique is super cool in sales and in life and in translation. So hopefully this has been good. I'm sure there's much more to be said about the art of negotiating, but these are the tips that I wanted to share. And now I'm going to go run at my beautiful park in Mexico City. It's called Elocotal, from elocote, which means pine, but I think in Argentina it means something indecent. Look it up yourself if you want to. We'll talk, actually, there is an interesting video coming up. Look out for it. It's about false friends within the same language, because I was tuned into this by a friend recently that even within the same language you can have false friends, right? Because in Spanish or in French or in English, one word can mean two different things. And I don't mean like, yeah, if you look in a dictionary, one word can mean two different things, but within two different contexts of the same language, it can be a false friend. But we'll talk about that in the next video. For now, please follow the channel. Please help me spread the word. Please support me, because I spend time, we spend effort producing these videos. And if my channel can grow, and if it can also help me make my name known and my brand known, and also get jobs, because I need my coffee and cakes and tacos and salsa, you're majorly helping me, because we live in a material world. And while I'm not a material girl, but I definitely like to spread the word, but mainly not just for me, because my mission in this world is to raise the standards of translation and interpreting. At least my mission in translation, because I have other missions. And one of them is to run in a beautiful place. So, out for now. Ciao.